what if what if civilization started over? Now, today we're going to be looking at an interesting scenario where 400 nuclear bombs were sent to were sent to Africa. However, accidentally, those nukes exploded, which then created the end of the world. However, somehow the world actually survived. However, all of the countries have died out. Now, firstly, we actually take a look at the Brazilians, which before the nuclear strike, they actually kept their city alive, I mean their capital city, which I'm guessing is over here. Oh wait, no, that's just freaking Argentina. So they end up getting their capital city, which I think is over here. Yeah, it looks like it. And also this part. And so basically just a small little Brazilian empire. Now what they don't know is that they're not the only ones who actually want to survive. There's a lot of picks. However, out of every single one, Cuba somehow gets next. Now Cuba is actually the green country. Now they have actually survived the nuclear strike, as they're the furthest country from Africa that is an official nation after the nuclear strike. Now then we have these Caribbean islands, including Jamaica, that end up being united by the Cubans. Eventually, Florida somehow joins in. Meanwhile, we're gonna take a look at all the way to southern Africa, where we're gonna see the brown country. Now the brown empire. Now the brown empire is going to be the very first actually big empire, as it'll stretch all the way to here. Anyways, they're gonna end up going all the way here. Reaching this part of Namibia. Then they get their first land. Then they get their first part of Madagascar, which, as it turns out, has the most amount of nuclear reactions, as most of the bombs were actually for Madagascar to attack the Mozambique people over here. However, the thing is that the explosions and stuff. However, meanwhile, we can see that this place actually went away from Madagascar because it's so nuclear that animals at this point have actually died out, and crops over here have also died out because of the nukes. Now the Africans end up gaining all of this land before they meet their bordering place. Now this is the Dark Cyan country. Now the Dark Cyan country was created from the remains of a bit of southern Africa, and a bit more, reaching all the way here. Now we can actually see the very first war starting to be in place. Now the first war is against the it's against these guys and these guys. Now firstly the Dark Cyan country ends up taking all of this part of the Brown Empire. However, the Brown Empire has a secret tactic. They secretly go up, attacking most of these areas. Eventually, they get the capital, which is over here, taking down the whole government. Now the government eventually then agrees to surrender. Now in this peace treaty right here, we can see that the Brown Empire has taken all of the lands except for this little area, which as it turns out is the most strongest part of the Dark Cyan country. However, the thing is that after the treaty, after the treaty, many of the people over here protested to actually join the Brown country. So now it has joined here. Now let's go back to the Southern American country. Now they end up taking this part, merging these two parts of the Brazilian thing, the Brazilian country. Now the Brazilian country expected the U.S. to come back. Well, as it turns out, it came back partially, because they did an expedition all the way to this part of what I'm guessing kind of like New York kind of place over here. However, as it turns out, they actually saw no one inhabit the place. They ended up meeting over here, which then they took this part and have the golden opportunity to invade Argentina. Now, firstly, they get this part, which is technically part of, I think, Chile, but yeah. Then they get this part of Argentina. Now, this is when the Cubans have some trouble. Now, the Cubans get this part, and also this part of Central America. However, then they discovered trading, because after the nuclear strikes, everyone lost their memory except for the modern memory. Except for modern memory, meaning that you know, they do understand about the nuclear strikes. They do understand about modern technology like mobile phones or laptops, but yeah, basically, you know, it's kind of empty, and they don't really know what they're supposed to do. However, they already know that they should make a country. Now, meanwhile, in the UAE, you can see a country, the purple country. Now, and no, it's not the old empire from like Etis Pro. It's not. It's this time. It's actually called the New Empire. I know. It sounds kind of crazy, but still, yeah. Now the New Empire over here is a pretty strong empire over here, which just got the Gulf of Persia. Now they are actually the strongest part of Asia, so yeah, because they have cities like Dubai. However, Dubai, don't worry, is kind of in the medium radius, which is mostly just this part. Wait, this part except for this part. However, yeah, they're in one of the medium safer places, which, as you can see, they actually own pretty good land, like Dubai. Their goal is to get New Delhi, or sorry, I don't really know what capital that is, but yeah. But basically, they get as much land as possible, eventually getting these lands. Eventually they reach the Mediterranean, and then they get Turkey. No, most of Turkey, or all of Turkey, and also Cyprus. Now they get that much land. However, the thing is that they actually lose Cyprus from a tribe. Yeah, that's right, a tribe somehow defeated this strong empire. Now let's go over here where we can see the Iberian Union about to take place. Now this Iberian Union is over here. And surprisingly they actually want to get all of Europe, including Africa. So they eventually drop into Morocco, and then they try getting Algiers and stuff, and they end up doing it. Now then they actually made their own conquest. Now then they eventually made a conquest all the way to the river Nile. However, all of the tribes over here actually hates the Iberian Union. Now the Iberian Union goes over here. However, this has to be the most stupidest defeat because they eventually got defeated from this amount of land. Now this is actually because they're not that strong because they're already a new country. But yeah, eventually they lose most of their African territory. Their only territories now are basically just Morocco and stuff, and that's it. So yeah,